Well, hello everyone, and this is once again Visual Pony with another story for you for Pony and Wolf Productions. Today we are reading the story Dance by Martain, another author that we have featured on here before. I guess this is kind of a, theme for today's recording session. Anyhow, here's a list of those amazing people who keep this channel alive with their monthly donations. And they get awesome perks like, downloads of all these stories for just $1 a month. So, and by the way, early access, because sometimes, months in advance. So, let's get this on, and, let's hope that I am not annoying you right now very, very badly. Move. Sun-kissed grass swished against hoofs, green blades soft and tickling against yellow legs, only a few inches longer than their tips. Applebloom trotted merrily through red-maned head held high and proud as she hummed a bouncy little tune. Spring had just turned into summer, the cool weather chased well away by the glowing brass disk of the sun above. The air was delightfully warm. The grass cool, and all around the birds and bugs and trees worked a cacophony of twittering and buzzing and rustling. Shadow and light turned the world to dappled motley beneath the orchard trees of Sweetapple Acres, the pattern shifting and flowing with the wind and the boughs and leaves. This time of year was probably Applebloom's favorite. Everything was just so alive and vibrant. A pony could feel the energy and excitement in the air, couldn't help but have a bit rub off and make one feel restless and wanting to just do something. Of course, living on a farm meant there was almost always chores and work to be done, but sometimes everything just fell into place and you were done hours before you usually were. This meant free time to do whatever you pleased, and in Applebloom's case she was pleased to venture out into the quiet privacy of the orchards for no other reason but because. The little filly liked being out among the trees, especially now when the last of the apple blossoms were just falling away. Delicate white petals drifted down in ones and twos around her as she strolled, their dance in the air somehow cheerful in itself. Applebloom neatly stepped around what fallen blossoms she could, feeling them much too pretty to just trot over. The tune she was humming had her head bobbing from side to side, curly tail flicking in time. She wasn't sure just where she had heard it, but it didn't matter all that much. The song did have a mind of its own though, and before long, Applebloom wasn't merely trotting through the orchard. She was doing a kind of quick-paced, high-stepping walk that didn't actually move her forward any faster than normal. Trotting hoofs kept pace with the playful tune in her head though, and it wasn't long for the rest of her body to start getting ideas in the same vein. It wasn't all that unusual for her to wander out here. The orchard was a comfortable and private place to do all kinds of silly things that Applebloom didn't want others to catch sight of. Dancing happens to be one of those things. She wasn't any good at it. This had been made painfully obvious a while ago. Applebloom dancing was either a national disaster in the making or the funniest event of the year. Neither was really something she was proud of, so she didn't even try it where others could see. But here in the orchard, there was no one to see, no one to point and laugh and make fun of her later. Bad dancing she might be, but Applebloom loved the feeling and the movement. She loved to just let herself go. She was bouncing along happily now with a bright grin, eyes closed, her curly tail following in her wake. She spun and whirled, up onto her rear hoofs to drift across the open grass, whirling as she went, all light as a feather. Well, she thought of herself as moving light as a feather. She fell down twice and hit a tree once, but those were outside problems. After a few moments, there were fresh green stains on her legs and flank, and a few errant blades of grass stuck in her mane. Her pink bow had a twig stuck in it. It was stupid and silly and awkward, but out here with no one watching, all that mattered was how fun it was. And maybe, just maybe, Applebloom might have been starting to get better. It was a secret hope in her heart of hearts, a wish that she would actually turn out to be an amazing dancer after all, if she just practiced hard enough. The filly could see herself in her mind's eye, gliding across dance floors and putting every pony around into slack-jawed awe with her grace and style. Everyone in town was watching her again, but now their eyes wide with shock as the little filly shimmied, wobbled drunkenly, pirouetted, bounced off a tree and tumbled, and executed an absolutely perfect, on-point landing on her face. The real world might have had a problem with Applebloom's dancing, but that's what imagination was for. In her own private world, every step and twirl was perfection. She was giggling and breathless in a few short minutes, and so brought her imaginary dance recital to a close with a wobbly bow. The sound of applause and whistles sharp in her mind's ear. She opened her eyes. Applejack was standing not a half-dozen steps away, leaning against a tree and staring right at Applebloom. Smirking at Applebloom. Every good feeling the filly had up to that point bled away in a rush. Suddenly she could feel ice all around, could hear the intake of air into 100 mouths that would storm out in gales of laughter directed at her. Applebloom suddenly felt heavy as lead. Awkward. Funny looking. She was painfully aware of the grass and twigs stuck in her mane and tail, the green stains on her legs. Her back knees gave up the ghost and her bum thumped to the ground. The filly cringed, waiting for Applejack to start laughing at the uncoordinated flailing she had witnessed. It was what everyone did. Applebloom wanted to run away, to just up and dash off and hope maybe somehow Applejack would forget seeing her and her stupid dancing. She wondered why she kept trying, wondered why she ever bothered hoping she'd ever be good at anything. She wanted to cry. A hat settled on her head. Applebloom sniffled and blinked back the threatening tears. She could see a set of hoofs in front of her, the rest of Applejack hidden by the brim of the hat. Cautiously she lifted her head a bit until she found Big Sister's kind face, green eyes soft. She was still smirking. No, that wasn't a smirk. It was a smile, gentle and warmed with a sister's love. The hateful feelings in her heart recoiled in the heat of her sudden shame for having ever thought Applejack would laugh at her. The filly wanted to cry all over again, but the first sob was brought up short by the hug Big Sister gave her. They stayed that way for a moment, chasing off the hurt and shame. Then Applejack helped Applebloom back up to her hoofs. Instead of leading her back to the farmhouse, though, the blonde mare sidled up next to the red-maned filly and did something with her front hoof. Tap-tap was a curious movement, a neat little side-to-side with the ankle that touched either edge of the hoof to the turf. Smartly, Applejack did it a second time, then gave little sister a playful bump with her flank. Applebloom tried to mimic the motion, frowning mightily in concentration, and was suddenly wide-eyed with wonder when she repeated it near perfectly. Okay, so it wasn't a pirouette on point, but she was still upright and hadn't gained any new grass stains. This was an improvement. Applejack showed her a few more simple steps, joining them together with the easy grace she had, and Applebloom followed as best she could the patient advice. It wasn't all that hard, but it took a kind of coordination the filly just never seemed to gain. When Applejack tried to have her turning in place with the steps, it only resulted in Applebloom somehow ending up on her back with her legs flailing. There was laughter in the air now, but it wasn't the hateful, hurtful sound it used to be. It was Applebloom laughing at herself. The two sisters kept trying the little step dance, kept mucking it up and laughing themselves silly with the effort. By the end, Applebloom was giving Applejack the dancing lessons, which meant the two were whirling and tumbling about the orchard like mad things. Grass and leaves and petals and twigs were stuck in their manes. Hides stained green in spots from particularly energetic tumbles into the turf. It was stupid and silly and awkward, and it was the most fun Applebloom had ever had in her life. As the sun set over Sweet Apple Acres, Applejack trotted home with Applebloom laying on her back. Her cheek was nestled in Big Sister's long blonde mane, and she was snoring softly through a smile that just wouldn't go away. Hello everyone and welcome back to Common Time with Visual Pony, and once again I will remind you that you can support Pony and Wolf Productions through the links down in the description below. Every dollar helps is needed and very much appreciated and helps to keep the lights on around here, food and stuff and bills and gas and all that good stuff. That's all the stuff that donations go to, Anyhow, what do I think about this? I actually think it's a very sweet story. I can't quite relate, because the relationship I have with my sister isn't the greatest. But, I still love it. I really do. I wish the relationship with my sis would have been like that, but yeah. I actually have a second sister. I have two sisters, and from what I have been told, my relationship with my oldest sister was actually very, very good. But I cannot remember that. She died roughly 31 years ago by now. 31 years by the point of this recording. Oh my god. Sincerely yours, Visual Pony, and let me know what you think about this story. And as always, I hope... Come on, seriously, we only have like 20 clones left. Can't you at least let them record more than one story?